So celebrating the journey, which is the 9th chapter. So in the book, of course, it's talking about the sacred path of the warrior, and the aim of the sacred path of the warrior is to express basic goodness. So let's refresh just a little bit on that, because I still find the idea of basic goodness, the phrase of it, it's a bit, what on earth does that mean again? It's not the concept of goodness. That's not actually what it is. It's what we experience fundamentally. It's a fundamental experience which is available to us all the time. So that fundamental experience can vary a lot, but if it's fundamental, it's like different flavors of ice cream. They're all ice cream. So it doesn't really matter which flavor of ice cream. And the same, it doesn't matter which experience it is, as long as it's fundamental. And fundamental in this sense means that it's not contrived. We're not creating the experience by the desires and fears and patterns of thought in our mind. So a simple example of it is your ability right now to hear. Your ability to be aware. So when you're experiencing yourself simply hearing, simply being aware, this is fundamental experience, because it's fundamentally good that we can hear and be aware. So you can take lots of other examples that are fundamentally good. It's fundamentally good to be alive, even though the experience of being alive may not be pleasant. But it wouldn't be anything if we were dead. So fundamental or basic goodness is not based on what type of experience that we're having. It's focused more on our capacity of having any experience at all. So when we can notice that we are capable of simply listening, of understanding language, which is of understanding, we have the capacity to understand. We have the capacity to be aware. So there is no way that these can be bad things in themselves. So in the book, they're describing the path of the warrior is to express basic goodness, is to express the awareness of the basic goodness of being alive. So when we notice this basic goodness, when we're aware of it, and that's For instance, in the introductory guided meditation, the last line says, and notice that you are filled with life. Because whatever experience we're having it because we're alive, we're filled with life. So this is a fundamental or basic goodness. So the expression of that is to be true to it, which is to be authentic, to be genuine. It's not to pretend that we are something different from what we are, or that life is something different from what it is. So if we pretend that that we don't suffer, for instance, this isn't really a good thing. We're not going to grow as human beings doing this. We're certainly not going to heal if we're living in a world of intense. So by being authentic, by being honest about ourselves and our world, so we're not trying to make it into something else. We're really meeting our world in the present moment as it is. Of course, our history of our personal history, this type of experience, this type of perception, it's not one that we normally grow up with. So it takes time to practice to develop the perception of basic goodness, that it's basically good to be alive, even though we suffer. And because we suffer, that gives us the energy to focus on growing, on changing, on transforming, on healing, whatever word you want to use. It's that we're using the experience of suffering to drive us forward. And eventually, driving forward means moving away from distractions, moving away from pretense, and coming into an authentic state of existence, of being in the present. So this idea of moving forward is actually to be present with an awareness of basic goodness. And so this, then we have a journey from the cocoon, coming out of the cocoon. We have this journey from our patterns of experience of the past, which color how we respond to our present reality. And when we respond to our present reality by simply being aware, we're in a place of basic goodness with present reality. We don't need to add anything to that. And as we practice this, we develop more skills and more abilities. And the specific one that we focus on is the journey of the healer. It's our journey developing our ability to heal. So we can, whether as the warrior or the brave person, their journey is to express basic goodness, or the healer is to express the healing attitude and activities. So the more we express healing attitude and activities in our lives, the further we are on our journey. this is what the book and I'm proposing here. Very often we, as individuals, well, collectively, we often want to limit our healing. We want to put this so much energy, so much feeling, so much thought. We want to put only so much energy and effort into healing to go back to the way things were. That's our usual drive, because the way things were, well, we were suffering a lot less before we lost our health with illness. So we want to go back to that. It's a real natural compulsion. The only thing about it is that going to the past is impossible. We can use the past, but we can't go back to it. So we need to imagine the future. And imagining the future needs to include developing our ability to heal. So right now, we're developing our ability to heal. And when we include that in the future, forever, the indefinite future, that we will always be developing and practicing our ability to heal. That's an endless future choice. In a sense, that's quite a big choice. Not in the effort of that choice, but because we're choosing to transform our lives. We're choosing to become different people. People that we become through our actions and activities of healing. So that changes us as a person. And that is something that we're naturally scared of doing, because when we really look at that honestly, and we're really honest looking at that, we don't actually control what that's going to look like. And we want to control, because when we're in control, we feel safe, we feel secure. It's a relief. Great. I'm in control now. I don't have to worry. Yeah. And it's a natural thought as well. So we don't need to judge ourselves for having any of our thoughts or feelings, including judgment. So one of the aspects of basic goodness is that when we're aware of our reality, we're not condemning it, because we're experiencing being aware of it or with it. Whether that's internal experiences or what's happening in our outside world. When we're in a state of awareness, we're also in a state of peace, because awareness doesn't have an agenda. It's not trying to make things like this or that. It's completely peaceful with whatever the experience is. And so when we're being aware, we're entering, even if it's moment, and it is momentary, and that slowly builds, but we enter and start entering a state of peace. And the practice is to keep doing it. And the peace grows. It grows because We're transforming ourselves, we're changing ourselves, we're becoming a peaceful human being, not because we think it's the morally good thing to do, but because it's a natural result of our actions. We're becoming aware of our reality as it is, and being aware of that, we're accepting it, we're working with it. We're naturally becoming more peaceful with it. So this is what it means in a way for the brave person to express basic goodness. It's not practicing a contrived picture of peace. It's a peace which is a natural expression of the central activity, which is meditation, although we can have other activities as well. So this basic goodness is our capacity to be conscious. That's one way of looking at it. Our capacity of being conscious. So to develop that basic goodness, we have to practice being conscious. So it means that when we become conscious of something, we stay with it. We stay with being conscious of this thing. If this thing is overwhelming, so when we become conscious of it, we're lost in it for 20 minutes or half an hour or days, or we're really lost in it, then being lost in it for a long period, that being lost is not meditating. And that being lost is not conscious. So if we're becoming aware, becoming conscious of something which is having that impact on us, then we need to choose something specific which has basic goodness in it, which is like breathing, or seeing, or hearing, the experience itself, not the content of the experience, not what we're actually hearing, but the fact that we're hearing, and being aware of this fact that we are hearing right now. So being aware, this capacity of consciousness, is the basic goodness. And it's the foundation. I keep thinking it's the foundation of healing, but I try to say a foundation. I can't consider, I haven't been able to think of something which is more fundamental in healing than being aware in the present, which is what meditation is. So the action of meditation doesn't have to be sitting here meditating. It can be something else, but it's being aware in the present. So when I'm walking in the park and I'm looking at the trees and listening to birdsong, I'm, not all the time, but I'm quite aware of that. I'm quite aware of what I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing the bird song, and I'm experiencing the trees and the sky and so on. So it can be really useful to have other activities that help you be aware in the present. And see if there is. See if there is. Maybe it's worth, over the next week, every time you notice something helping you to continue being aware, take a note of it. and try and practice that if possible. So this basic goodness, which is the source of expressing our healing attitude and activities. So we're focusing, using this experience of basic goodness, of basically being alive, being aware in the present. We're using this as our source to express in terms of healing attitude and activities. But this basic goodness is something which is very simple. As you can see, it's not something which the mind creates. In fact, we notice it when we're aware. Our mind could be creating things or not, or just ruminating the past. But when we're aware, we're in that state, we're entering that state of simplicity, which is in a way egoless. And there's no ego there. There's no contrived mind. We're not caught up in the contrivings and the creations of our mind. We're not caught up in the intensity of different emotions. We're experiencing awareness. So a couple of weeks ago, we saw that one of the steps of the healer was the renunciation. And for the warriors, the renunciation of selfishness. And for us, I described the renunciation of everything or anything that stands in our way of healing. So the renunciation of selfishness helps us to move into this egoless state of meditation, of being aware in the present. And it's a natural question then, if we're practicing healing activities and attitudes to be alive and to heal so we can have happiness in our relationships with ourselves and life and our friends, family, and so on. That sounds maybe a bit selfish. It's about me, isn't it? So I asked a question just to step into it for a moment and make it clear that the renunciation of selfishness is not the renunciation of compassion. Because when we're in this simple state, we have a certain openness and connection with our experiences, ourselves, the world around us. We have an openness with it. It's not contrived. It's not, I'm the teacher and you're the student. Yeah, do you see what I mean? Even if that's the role that's being played, that's not where the energy of the role is coming from. The energy of the role is coming from basic goodness. So it's not about me or me being the teacher, even though that's the role. The role, it's about expressing basic goodness. So the renunciation of selfishness is not the renunciation of compassion. We can, and if we understand that the expression, the ambition, if you want, I'm using a dangerous word in this context, I'm going to use it anyway, the ambition of healing, of having good relationships, and having a life of happiness where we're able to do what we want, and having our relationships and all that stuff. Wouldn't, if you were perfectly healthy and you met somebody who was suffering like you are, wouldn't you naturally want them to be better? And maybe if you could do something to help them, you would. So the same is true for ourselves. So we meet ourselves who is suffering. So isn't it the right thing to do to help ourselves out of our suffering? And for us, that's focused on healing. So focusing on our healing is an expression of compassion in this way. For some people, focusing on their healing could be pure selfishness as well. That's also true. But then, if that's the case, they're not coming from a place of basic goodness. And their healing will come against some barriers because they're not using the real healing energy. So where are we? And Nazani said, is all about us individually, yet we are all one. Yeah, that's perfectly said. Yeah. We are both individuals and we are one. The two realities they're coexistent. They don't actually contradict each other. And if I step into it a little bit more, we recognize ourselves as being individual. You are your body and emotions and mind. I'm over here with my body, emotions, and mind. So we say that you're one individual, that's another individual. We recognize all these individuals. But our body, the cells of our body, they belong to nature, don't they? When we're eating and drinking and growing and dying, and our dead bodies when they're dead, we never stop being part of nature. So we're always part of something which is bigger. I think it's a greater difficulty in modern times where there's such an emphasis on the individual, because the individual is much easier to manipulate than when people are in their transcendent and manifest states. So when we're in the state of mind or of, when we're synchronized. So me as an individual is synchronized with the one, with everything, and whatever words you want to use for that, please do. When we're synchronized with that, then we've kind of made it, haven't we? Well, this is the journey. So it describes how we need discipline to do this. The healer is a new way of life that requires discipline, which is practice. That's it. It's practice. That's why I say practice, practice, practice. It's discipline, discipline, discipline. It's the exact same meaning. But it's not discipline which is to impose a set of rules and to push us down. That's a contrived, where we're trying to impose a result on us. Whereas in fact, the practice which leads us into our basic goodness and the expression of our healing abilities, it's not contrived at all. So we need discipline to keep entering into the experience of healing. So when we're coming into basic goodness, being aware in the present, every single moment where we are aware in the present, we are in a state of healing. They're not two different things, they're not separate. So we can talk about them individually, but they're part of the one. Thank you, Amy. So the discipline for us as healers, as apprentice healers, is turning towards healing actions. So whenever we become aware and of a certain situation, a certain circumstance, or experience, whatever's going on, and we approach it from the point of view of how can we respond to this in a way which supports our healing. So a lot of the time, the big practice for me, when I put it that way, the big practice for me in that was being calm, practicing calmness in response to whatever. It's not automatic. For me now, it's part of being aware is being calm as well. The calmness really it's just part of it. I don't know how else to say that. Now, there are some situations and thoughts and different things that I don't have a calm reaction to. So they are then not to be avoided from me because I have a practice already. They're something which can really be the subject of improving my practice, is to develop my peacefulness with the things which are difficult. But if a lot of difficulties, if we're really experiencing a lot of difficulties, then we don't need to search for difficulties. We don't need to do that. We just need to work in the present. So this is the discipline, is to practice to take every opportunity that we can. And we become conscious of something often because there's a kind of pain related to it. And then we trying to get rid of the pain. And this is natural, so it's okay. But it's not trying to get rid of the pain is not the thing which will actually help us to heal. What helps us to heal is being open to the pain. So being open to what we're conscious about. And if we're not in any pain, that's equally fine as well. We need to, it's not just to be aware of pains, to be aware of everything. But it's usually the painful stuff is what blocks us, because we don't want to experience it. It's pain that we have had in the past that we weren't able to deal with, or pain in the present that we're not able to deal with, and so we try to get rid of it. So in the path of the warrior, the path of the healer, we're not trying to get rid of it. We're developing a peaceful relationship with it by being aware of our pain. And if you practice that, so practicing being calm makes that a lot more feasible. So if we practice being calm as a response, we're able to stay in awareness for longer, because we're relating to our pain not as something to get rid of, but as something that we have a relationship with and that we care about. Fundamentally, we care about it in some way because it's part of us. It's part of our life and environment. So in some way, fundamental way, we care about it. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be conscious about it. So when we enter that place of being conscious, being aware of the pain that I'm experiencing, we might notice our body, clenching getting tight, maybe. We might feel our mind closing in a little bit. And if we can still be aware, to continue being aware, even as our thoughts and experience changes. This is a discipline. And when we practice this, we have a source of celebration. We have a source of celebration. It's possible for us to take joy in our struggle, in the reality that we are at times facing our struggle. And that's enough. That's huge. That's huge. I really have to admit that I've really actually stayed away from having had much focus on happiness or joy. I've really stayed away from that because there've been, I've had horrific medical abuse and attitude from family and people that I know. I've had absolutely horrific story besides all the illness. So I really stayed away from it, and because the idea of having a focus of happiness brought up such intense feelings of sorrow and anguish and unhappiness that was just overwhelming. So I left it. That was it. I just left it. I'm focused on other things, like being calmer in my responses, and I was able to do that. And so, in a way, it doesn't matter what practice we have, as long as we have practice related to fundamental goodness, which is our very essence. So yeah, but it actually seems to have flowed, yeah, flowed. I'm on the bank of the river where I'm experiencing more happiness, and it's not as the result of any particular action. Things are still, there's loads of things which are absolutely horrendous. All the slander that I've been the victim of, that still goes on. It's still being repeated. There's the abuse from the medical system. It's still going on. I don't talk about it, but it's still happening. It's still active. And yeah, I've mentioned that in the last 5 minutes twice. And the first, I really felt that the sadness and the anguish. And the second time, and I'm okay, I was aware of feeling that as I was talking about it. And I've no struggle with feeling that. I'm open to it. I can feel that calmly. I'm just open with it. And then it passes, because there's no holding on or holding it back. I wasn't trying to do that. So then the second time talking about it, I wasn't experiencing the anguish. Now, if I do talk about it a lot more, I probably will. So we'll try and we'll try not to do that. But the thing is, I think it's just a very simple and really good example of being open and how being open, which is, the result, and it's also the experience of meditating, being aware in the present. It's being open to the present, in the present, being open to whatever life is now. So when we have that, yeah, we're already living a different kind of life, even though lots of things haven't changed. Our state, our relationship with life has fundamentally changed when that's happening. let's see, taking joy in working with the struggle and the peace that comes from leaving the cocoon. Because at the earlier stages of leaving the cocoon, you know, is going to be more intensely painful. As somebody said to me, it was really interesting at an event last night, and somebody said about you know being open brings so much pain. I thought, oh, that's really interesting because from my perspective, being closed is much more painful than being open. And I didn't challenge her on it, but I just thought that it was a really different perception, and in a way, it shows something about the journey of accepting pain and being open. So that piece comes naturally with practice. And you see a lot of people, I've met lots of people who practicing meditation for 30 or 40 years. And they would have been better off going fishing. Really, I really mean it. And it would have brought them some peace because they never got any peace from it. They're just kind of used as a sort of oppression, to be honest. So this practice synchronizes mind, body, and spirit because we're open to all aspects of the present reality, and everything is here if we stay being open for long enough. We'll notice everything. So it's all here. So ultimately, it all synchronizes, and this practice requires openness and curiosity. Without being open, it's not going to work. And it was something that I said earlier. Oh, it's come and gone. If we try to determine the results of the changes that we want to live happier lives, if we try to determine what that looks like, then we're trying to fixate on something which when we don't control, we don't know if it's going to be true. So we're actually putting stresses onto ourselves with those kinds of expectations. But when our energy is really focused on being in the present, then those changes will happen, and we don't need the expectations. And when we have those expectations as well, we're not actually being open, not fully. We may be open to many degrees or many ways, but we're not fully open. Because when we're fully open, we accept we're not actually in control. And we're okay with it. So, we've let go of a certain level of struggling to make life the way we want. And as a result of that, there's peacefulness. So this practice requires real openness, a curiosity. If we're being closed and dogmatic or following rules of oppression or closure, closing, where we're going to limit our capacity of healing. And the things which we're closed about, that we're dogmatic about, that we're oppressive about, those things, are our habits. They are the things that we work on. They're the subject that we work on. And we don't really have to make a list, because just by going into the state of being aware in the present, meditating, those things come up in us. So we don't really have to search for them. far more fundamentally important to actually come into this state of healing. So let's do that for a few minutes. Just keep coming back to being aware. We are nothing less than a wave on the ocean of infinity.